So
Mm.
I never thought I deserved to be treated very well because that was not the experience I had in former relationships. So I always needed to prove my worth and my value. I always needed to be useful, to do something valuable, to be kind to people so that I deserve kind
Hmm.
treatment, which is a pattern and a bullshit story in itself, right?
Hi, Nadja. Welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to get to know you a little bit today and have a conversation, get to hear your story. So, thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Yeah, I know that you are a self-love coach and that you're passionate about supporting and helping overcoming people pleasers, which I definitely have experienced in my life and would consider myself an overcoming people pleaser as well. But I'm curious for you, like, what first kind of got you into that? How did you first decide that supporting someone and supporting people that struggle with people pleasing and maybe not placing boundaries and all those things? Like, how did you first decide that that was the people that you wanted to support and help?
That was actually a long journey, and I switched routes and developed myself during this journey. I have a very strong corporate background, and I worked in male dominated, highly competitive environments. So I was mainly surrounded by men, and I know that they already have a lot of support and they have their kind of friendships or boys clubs, if I can say so.
Yeah.
We as women we normally don't, and we don't have the networks. So that was one thing why I definitely wanted to support women with a focus on them, and becoming a self-love coach and helping people to recover from people pleasing and set healthy boundaries. That's actually the result of my own journey. um, I have been the prime example of a people pleaser for years without even knowing it. And I tried so many things. I tried to create connected friendships. I tried to create loving romantic relationships. I tried to build a successful career. And I stumbled over my own feet over and over and over again. And I did a lot of things to change this and applied strategies, learned new tools and techniques, and developed myself. But in the end, it did not really help because the core issue was a completely different one. The core issue was something inside of me. And
Mm.
when I started to heal this, then things fell into place. It's kind of magical.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally understand that. That like realization when you can actually take ownership over the fact that, oh my gosh, everything in my life is because of something that's happening inside of me. And I think a lot of us that hit that self growth, hurdle and or hit that, stopping blocking point in our life, that's the next step is figuring out, okay, oh my gosh, wait, it's coming from me. And for you, like what was that whole experience like? What happened in your life that led to you, other than like some of what you've shared, that led to you being like, oh my gosh, it is coming from inside me.
So the first thing was, it's 15 years ago by now. It's a long time. I was working in investment banking, and my then boss called me into his office. And I arrived there, and he told me, "I'm gonna fire you today." And I was
Oh,
asking him, "Why?" And he told me straight to the face, "Because you are the bad S word." Don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but in
oh yeah,
fact,
say all the words. They're all
yeah, he
welcome
said,
here.
"Because you're shit." And I was
Wow.
like, "What? Okay, can you give me some examples? What have I done wrong?" Because 2 days earlier, I was in his office and I received a lot of praise and recognition, and my work is so valuable. So that hit me out of the blue completely.
Hmm.
And there wasn't anything to fix anymore. An hour later, I was standing on the road with my box in my hands, like in these classical movies.
Yeah.
It was like a nightmare. And the next thing that happened, that my friends didn't call me anymore because they weren't friends. I had a huge business network. And 3 weeks later, my then fiance broke up with me. So, in fact, I ended up with nothing left than me, myself, and I, and definitely a lot of not good enough. And what I noticed at this period of time in my life is that I had identified so much with the job I was doing. The job was me, or I was the job. There was no Nadia anymore. It was me, the career woman, the high achieving woman. It was me, the investment banking woman, and everything that comes with this. And
Mm-hmm.
the moment that was taken away, nothing was left. I didn't know who I was, and I didn't know what I wanted to do and what I liked. That was the first awakening moment. The rest is a journey. It was not that this moment led to, okay, now I'm gonna get it right. It was the starting point. I noticed something very serious is not right here, but I actually didn't know what it was, and I didn't have a single clue where it came from. So the next steps developed over time.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I totally relate to you on having everything stripped from you and then having to realize, oh my gosh, I don't even know who I am. I don't know what I want. I don't know what I like. I don't know any of these things. Or even if I thought I liked this, it's making me question every single thing because the foundation is completely cracked, right? And for you, you really had almost every little part of your life stripped from you at once. And that's, if anything, I mean, that's a major catalyst for change, right? I mean, and that's like one of the hardest things I think as a human is dealing with change, dealing with transition, and you had to deal with all of that at once. And so like for you, how did you what were some of the first steps that you started doing to get to know Nadia, like who you are and what you like and all those things and the nitty-gritty in between?
So, the first thing was it catapulted me into my bed for about 6 months. I was so ashamed and I felt so, oh gosh, I still can remember it very well, but I didn't want to get in touch with anybody. And I know 6 months later, there was a birthday party of a former study colleague of mine, and I so wanted to go. But I was so afraid people gonna ask me, "Hey, what are you doing?" And then
Hmm.
I need to tell them, I got fired. And they're gonna ask me why. Yeah, because I'm shit. Great, awesome. That's not what I wanted. So I
Hmm.
stayed home in my bed. It was 10. It got 10:30 in the evening. And then it was like, I so want to go. I want to see them. Awesome people. We had so much fun. And I thought, okay, if it's that bad, I just slip out in silence and
Yeah,
just
there you
don't
go.
go. So I went there and I met the host, a fabulous guy. And the first thing he asked me was, of course, what are you doing? And I was like, I got fired. Why? Because I'm shit. Me too. What? What? I know this guy so well. He's absolutely amazing, fabulous, professional. He knows what he's doing. And he told me this happened to me twice with the same company. So they
Wow.
fired me and told me you're a shit, that's why we fire you. Then they rehired me and then they fired me again. And he said, something I noticed was that it hadn't anything to do with me. And that was the big learning that I took away from this evening, that this is just the way things are done in this, not always, but to a big part in this investment banking thing. Because actually the company that fired me, they mistraded for a lot of money, so they needed to get rid of people, and I was just the first, and they didn't
Hmm.
want the market to know anything about it, so they put all the blame on me. And what I've learned is that it wasn't about me. I was just at the wrong time, at the wrong place, and pretty unlucky. And these are things that I learned over and over in my life. Everything something negative happened, I thought, oh, it was me, it's my fault. But
Hmm.
actually, these things happen all the time to everybody. Not exactly the same things, but everybody has a story to tell where a lot of not very comfortable, shitty things are happening. And the only
Hmm.
difference is how we tackle them. Do we have the self worth and the self confidence to know this is just life? And I need to take it on. I need to handle it in the best way possible and make the best out of it, however miserable it is. Or do I think, oh, yeah, it's me, I better not try? So that
Hmm.
was the biggest learning. But I think I missed your question. I got so into telling this.
No, oh my gosh, I loved it. I appreciate where you went with that because I think that's so true that, I mean, we all have our struggles. We all have our things that happen around us to us that suck, honestly, right? And or are hard to navigate and it's so easy, especially in situations like yours where you literally had your boss say, "Well, you're shit." It's so difficult to not initially take that on and be like, well, I'm shit, I'm not worthy, I sucked at my job, or what did I do wrong, what could I have done differently, and you just spiral into this, honestly, self-hate and self-pity. And it's I think that's such a common thing to get lost into that spiral and get dragged into that. And I feel like that also ties into people pleasing as well, right? It's that same like core thing, which is I want other people to be happy, but mostly I want other people to be happy with me. I want them to like me. I want them to feel okay with me, that I'm not causing trouble. And so then when something does go wrong, I feel like as a people pleaser, that's the first place you're going to look, is to look inward and be like, well, I am shit. And so you definitely hit that stage as well. But to have I love that you had your friend reflect that to you, who was just like, you know what I realized? It doesn't really have to do with me. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
really cool.
that was, for me, that was a game changer. So that was still not the turning point. So I just got back on my feet. I found another job. I tried to rebuild everything. But it was just, when there's the first crack, things are not going like they did before. So it stayed kind of difficult because deep down inside I was still thinking, yeah, maybe it was me. And at the same time, I had the feeling that something of myself was missing, but I couldn't really grasp it. And these things started to change over time. I had a very close friend that is also very well versed in psychotherapy, and she was sharing a couple of things with me. So these things actually brought me to recognize that I have been surrounded by a lot of toxic and unhealthy structures. So you said when it comes to people pleasing, um, I don't want to be trouble, and that's the point. People pleasing is something that we develop when we are children, and all the parents, to a certain extent, they say, be quiet, behave well. And to a certain extent, that's okay. But if this is all you hear, if you don't feel the empathy of your caregivers, whether it's your parents or grandparents or whoever it is, but if you don't feel the empathy, if you are not valued for who you are, if you don't have these moments of true connection, I have a daughter, she's 4 years old. So I have a lot of opportunities to watch her and to learn from her, and she's my greatest teacher, to be honest. So often she comes, look, mommy, look what I've done. And she just wants to connect with me. She wants to feel seen and heard and valued. And this is massively important for us as children to grow up whole and healthy. And if we don't make this experience, but instead the blame is always put on us. You're so difficult, you're always loud, you're whatever it is that you hear over and over again,
Hmm.
then subconsciously we think and we are convinced that something is wrong with us. But we are so ashamed of this that we do everything to try and hide it. And that's really the challenging part here, because we hide it for ourselves too. And it takes some deep, deep moments of contemplation to look ourselves in the mirror and notice, oh yeah, we are actually people pleasing. And it's not about being kind to others. It's about not being trouble, not being the troublemaker. It's a
Hmm.
protection mechanism. And it has a lot of consequences in all areas of my life and everybody else's life. So people pleasing is seriously something that is sabotaging you on all levels in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting because I feel like, so for me, people pleasing came less from my parents and more from because I had older siblings that went through a lot of struggles when I was little. And so my idea was I wanted to be the one that was not trouble. I wanted to be, I didn't want to be struggling and having these arguments and these experiences that I saw my older siblings have. And so I took on this role of wanting to be the happy one and keep everyone happy around. Um, and so that's something that I carry still to this day, where like I want to always take everybody else's trouble and put them in my backpack and carry it for them, because I think if I can do that, then I'm of value, right? Then I'm doing something right, then I'm supporting others, right? And what ends up happening though is I feel like that other side of people pleasing, where unintentional manipulation or unintentional, you know, outletting of my feelings on others, right? So I would always want to fix problems for people. So let me help you with this, let me help you with that, let me do this, and let me be no trouble at all myself, but I'll support you. But then what happens is then there's those moments where, oh no, you're messing up your life. This is how you need to do it. This is how you need to do it. And that ends up pushing people away too. And it's just kind of interesting to me that I feel like people pleasing in my mind, and I think for so many others, it's this idea of this is what creates connection. This is what creates, a healthy relationship, right? If I can just appease, or I can just be the helper type of thing. And what I've realized is the complete opposite of that, which is that it closes you off from those around you. And like you said, it affects every single part of your life. It limits where you can go and how you can grow as a human being, or because I think the root of it is we're not able to be vulnerable when we are people pleasing.
Yes,
Yeah.
so much yes to this. People pleasing does not create a space for mutual and connected relationships. Instead, it pushes people away. And you said it, the pattern beneath this is that you're people pleasing because you don't want to be trouble and you want to do something so that you are valuable. So people pleasers, they derive their value from something they do,
Mm,
but not from who they are. And that's a massive thing here because you are kind and valuable as you are. You don't need to prove your value. You might sometimes behave unkind, like we all do. We are human. None of us is perfect, you know? But we don't need to constantly do something valuable to be valuable. That is
yeah.
what we do can come on top. And the next thing is you said you wanted to help everybody around you and you're carrying, you want to fix their life. I can so relate because I made the same experience. And when I work with my clients, they have all the same experience. But the thing here is, it's so much easier to look at other people's lives and
Hmm.
tell them, oh, I know how to fix you, than to look at ourselves. Because,
Hmm.
especially when we are people pleasers, when we look at ourselves, in the first instance, it hurts so badly because we need to admit, and we do admit in this process, then, oh, I actually wasn't kind because I'm the kind one. I just did what I did because I thought I don't have a choice, because I don't want to be trouble. I don't want to get in trouble. And actually, beneath this, I'm so angry and so furious. There are so many raw and vulnerable emotions that are buried below the level of, oh, I'm kind, I'm pleasing everybody, but not myself. So it's a very complex thing.
Yeah. It's interesting because it's like the same. I feel like as people pleasers, the intuition is okay. I'm looking at myself, right? I am looking at I'm admitting to my faults, right? Because we dive into this shame spiral. We're like, well, I am such a bad friend. I'm such a bad this. I do this, and so we feel like we're admitting to our darkness, our inside stuff that is not so great, right? But actually, it's the opposite of that. I was, at least for me, so terrified sometimes to look at the dark side of ourselves, where we mess up, where our pride comes up, how we have been a bad friend, how we have not been there for people we should be there for, or how we've been just like all these things that, are not fun to look at, right? Like the mistakes we've made. But like you said, we're humans. We all have these sides. We all mess up and make those mistakes. And I think that it's like tied in there where instead of facing it and admitting it exists, we just instead want to just tear ourselves down, and we think that's the same thing, and it's really so different. One is
Yes.
shame and one is responsibility, right?
Yes, yes, absolutely. This one is tearing us down. It's shame, absolutely. And the other thing is responsibility and growth and development. And
Mm-hmm.
I can remember it as if it was yesterday. I came across the question, do I deserve this?
Mm.
Financial freedom or financial abundance and happiness in my life, easiness, so having a life of ease. And I was asking myself, do I truly deserve this? And when you don't stay at the surface level, but you go a little bit deeper, I noticed that I thought, I'm not sure. I'm seriously not sure. And this was a
Mm-hmm.
process of feeling and healing emotions that took me about 3 days. And I was so sad. I was so angry at the same time. I felt so insecure. There were so many doubts, shame, so many negative emotions that we normally don't want to feel. And especially as people
Mm-hmm.
pleasers, we push them away because we are always okay. Everybody wants to see a smiling face. Are you okay? Yeah, sure, of course. I'm
Mm-hmm.
doing very
Mm-hmm.
well. Can I help you? Because the moment I need to admit, no, my life sucks, I feel worthless, I don't know anything anymore, that's a moment that makes us truly, really vulnerable. And then we are afraid, we get scared that we might get hurt, that people might make fun of us. And for some of us, this has been the experience in the past, which then contributes to us continuing people pleasing.
Yeah, yeah, it's a tricky beast, I feel, to face, right? But also when we do, kind of going back to what we were talking about with our relationships and our life, when we do take responsibility, when we can look internally and say, okay, yeah, I made this mistake, I've done this, I'm not always perfect, that's when, and we take responsibility instead of just tearing ourselves down as being someone horrible. That's what opens us up to uh, relationships. That's what opens us up to growing in our life and having a better job or communicating, having tough conversations and stuff like that. And it's not easy, but yeah, it's like I feel like once you can cross that and face it at least once and experience that like positive effect from it, then it's maybe not so scary and you can do it again. You're like, okay, I can maybe face my darkness one more time, But that first time is terrifying. Well, for you, like, do you remember any time in your journey where you had to do that, where you had to face your imperfections and your darkness and all those things?
Yeah, it was exactly in these situations. So the one I mentioned before, when I was doing some mindset work, in this case money mindset, and I wanted to develop a more abundant and more connected relationship to money.
Mm,
So the question of value and worth, not of only money, but of my value and worth, wasn't that far. And that was the first moment that I needed to face. I had a dark night of the soul, as we call it.
mm-hmm,
And what I noticed is that when you face this the first time, there's a part within you that tells you, you're gonna die. You're not
Yeah.
gonna survive this. And um, yeah, we believe this. But when we went to our first dark night of the soul and we actually came out alive, and not only alive, but more thriving than we did before, then we know, okay, there is this voice in our head that is telling us this, but it's actually not true. So I did it once. I probably can do it twice. And when you get a
Yeah.
little bit more of practice, then you know that this voice is plain lying. Um,
Hmm.
and you can just move on and continue to thrive and grow and face these things. But for me, a very interesting point of my life was when I needed to ask myself, where did that come from? So why do I have these things? And
Hmm.
um, the thing that brought up this question was that it's more than 10 years ago in the meantime. And I separated from a boyfriend I had at this time. And he was not really a nice guy. And the friend I told you about before, she told me, oh, if I would need to diagnose him, I would probably look in the narcissistic spectrum.
Mm.
And I was like, what? For me, this was also always so grandiose, and these people who are so self-assured, so super confident. That was not my experience I had with him, but I value her a lot. So I said, okay, I take this with me, give me some time, and I started to do some research. And I was like, shit, gosh, all these stories, they are all so similar to mine. What the hell is
Mm.
going on here? And the same thing repeated. I put all the blame on him because he was the bad guy, so I was okay. And that helped a little bit for a certain while.
Hmm.
And then necessarily the question came up, but what does this have to do with me? And
Hmm.
that was the second dark night of the soul. Like, oh gosh, I probably play my part in it too. And that was very, very scary to notice that I had parts that were fitting his behavior. So
Mm.
I never thought I deserved to be treated very well because that was not the experience I had in former relationships. So I always needed to prove my worth and my value. I always needed to be useful, to do something valuable, to be kind to people so that I deserve kind
Hmm.
treatment, which is a pattern and a bullshit story in itself, right? Because none
Hmm.
of this is true. But if this is the experience you make over and over again, then you construct your own worldview. And you know what we think is right, what we are convinced of, these are the things that we will see and experience in our everyday life over and over again. And then we think, oh yeah, that's how it is. I'm right. But
Hmm.
when we understand how our mind works, that everything that contradicts this belief is actually kind of blindsided. Even if we would want to see it, if we really, really want to, we just can't because our brain just turns in a different direction. Like, no, that's not true. Look at this. This is the belief. That's the truth.
Hmm.
The moment you recognize these things, like, I hate to admit it, but it has something to do with me. That was a holy shit moment. And the next thing was, okay, if it has something to do with me, how can I change that? And that's where finally the empowering part came in and things started to move and to heal and to go in a better direction. But it was a journey until that.
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure it was a journey after that as well. That makes so much sense that you get in, if you're in a bad relationship or you're in a unhealthy relationship or an unhealthy situation with your job or all these things, it's so easy to say, well, like you said, this is a man who was not healthy, and you're like, okay, well, it's all his fault. That sucked. And kind of continue that pattern too, to be like, okay, well, all men suck. Or all, anyone that dates me is just like a terrible person or something. And that's an easy thing to do, right? Because that feels a little bit safer to say, well, it's their fault because they did mess up, right? But I love that you said, well, I mean, did it come from me? Is there anything that I, that I contributed to this? And like, and it's not taking responsibility for what he did. It's not changing the fact that he made mistakes or he hurt you or did these things, but it's acknowledging, okay, well, is there something that I can do to change this? Is there something I can do so that I don't experience this again, so that I don't repeat myself? And I think that's powerful, right? That's exactly when you said you started feeling your empowerment, is that acknowledgement of, okay, well, maybe there is something in the way I view the world that is giving me the same result every single time, right? And I think so many of us get in that that place, right, where we have that worldview, especially like I see this in long-term relationships, right, where you start to perceive someone as being this type of person. They're going to do this. They're going to take this type of thing. And so then you just start to build this like divot for them to just be in, instead of realizing maybe there's something I'm doing that's contributing to them interacting this way, or maybe there's something I'm doing that's having me perceive them that way, right? And when you can take control over that and realize that so much of what is happening around you can be shifted and changed by what you do yourself, whether that means you leave the situation or you change the situation. Either way, like that's where the good stuff is, right? Is when you can take that responsibility and say, I have power here, right? I'm not a victim.
Yes, absolutely. And it is exactly as you said, you can change the dynamic of relationships. And it doesn't matter if it's a romantic relationship, a friendship, family
Mm-hmm.
relationships, or your boss or your clients, whatever. Every relationship can be changed through the dynamic. And we, as part of this relationship, we do contribute and sometimes create a massive amount of this dynamic. So sometimes I can change myself and what I give into the relationship and the dynamic and help to shift it to healthy. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's, and this is super, super important, what I've learned is that it's not about blame.
Mm.
So just because I acknowledge that I play a huge part in this dynamic doesn't mean it's all my fault. There
Mm-hmm.
are things that the other person does wrong too. And sometimes they don't want to change, sometimes they can't change. And this is the exact moment where I have the power to say, okay, I have changed my dynamic, but I notice the other part is walking all over me still. Then I can set, that's where boundaries come in. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
not treated accordingly, I can decide to leave. And it doesn't matter if it's a romantic relationship or a family relationship, whatever it is. We have also the power to consciously decide to which people we do want to give our time and our energy, because both of them are limited and
Mm-hmm.
I would say even more valuable and precious than money. So we should,
Absolutely.
we often think so much about, oh, should we spend these $100 on this or better not? How often do we think about, should I actually spend my valuable limited time here on earth with this person? And then knowing I have been kind, I have been clearly, transparently communicating my needs and my boundaries, and I see them being stepped over and over again, and I leave the interaction drained, depressed, exhausted, angry, whatever it is. How often do we think about this? And I think we do not think about this enough. And we should start to do this to create a life that's happy, fulfilling, a life with ease, and to set the boundaries. What I notice is that everybody of us encounters toxic people during our lifespan. But there are some people who get intertwined with them and go to deeper interactions because they are used to being treated poorly. And there are other people who say, that's okay, do whatever you want, but not in my space, not in my life. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a saying we have in German, go with God, but go.
Okay. That's awesome. Like, hey, I wish you all the best, but get out. That's amazing. That's perfect. Yeah, I think that like I feel like we're so many good juicy things you're saying. I feel like I just want to like pinpoint all of them. But I'm curious if you were to give advice to someone that is feeling like they're in the trenches where you felt when you were at this point where everything was stripped away from you, you didn't know where to start, you didn't know what you wanted or who you were and all this, like what is like some advice you would give to someone who's in that place right now?
This is a very difficult place to be in. So my first advice is give room to your feelings and emotions. Even if you're angry like hell, or you want to burn everything down, or if you want completely isolate yourself from the world because you feel so ashamed, whatever it is, it's okay. And if you look at what you have experienced, it's totally normal to feel this way. So these feelings are not there to show you that the negative things about you are correct. They are there because you have been treated badly, poorly, and you haven't been seen, felt, and valued as a human being, as we all should be. So it's completely natural to have strong emotions, negative emotions. That's the first thing. Give room to them and feel them, because the moment we allow them to be felt, this is the moment they can start to move through our body, through our systems, instead of getting stuck somewhere and causing severe problems later. And what you will notice is when you feel your feelings, not draining in them, like giving up, but feeling them, that they will change. It's alchemizing, it's healing, the first step of healing. That's one of the tips and advices and tricks I would give here. And the second one is to start really, really small with getting to know yourself. Write some things down and start with easy things. What's your favorite color? I still can remember when somebody asked me, what's your favorite flower? And I was thinking, oh, my mom said always that sunflowers are so beautiful because they are so yellow and they are so full of joy. So I said, sunflowers. I like sunflowers, but they are definitely not my favorite flower. But I didn't know any better at this time. So start to write these things down. If you don't know what's your favorite flower, have a date with yourself. Take yourself out to a beautiful park. Maybe you find a flower garden where you can see and smell a lot of different flowers, and just be curious and open and see what's coming up. Is there a smell you like? Is there a shape you particularly like? Write these things down and take it step by step. It's imagine you're seriously and healthily dating. You're not jumping into the first date like, tell me everything about you and I want to get to know you from head to toe. No, probably not. You're having a little bit of time, you're having a slight conversation. It's getting deeper over time. So start to date yourself, start to seriously get to know yourself step by step. That would be my two most important tips here. Yeah.
I love it. Those are so good. So first, feeling your feelings, allowing what comes up to come up, right? And give permission to feel all those yucky feelings. And even if that means, like you said, for you, it was 6 months of feeling like you were struggling and it processing all those emotions. And so everyone's timeline looks different, right? Maybe you feel those emotions for 2 days and maybe you feel them for 6 months or maybe, and so I love that processing and feeling your emotions. And then secondly, to date yourself. I love it to figure out what you want, what you like. And I used to do one-on-one coaching and I coached women on accessing what they wanted so they could then have better relationships, right? And the one thing that I always used to tell my clients is to start with breakfast. Start in the morning. What do I want to eat for breakfast? Don't eat what you eat every single day. Don't just wake up and drink your coffee, but actually have a day where you sit there and you see, what do I want to eat for breakfast? And maybe you can't come up with something, but you try something and you say, okay, well, maybe that wasn't one exactly what I wanted. But like having this breakfast be such a thing that there's no like loss here, right? If you eat something that wasn't your favorite that morning, that's fine, right? If you go to the garden, like you said, and you pick a flower and you're like, I love that flower, but it's not quite my favorite, there's no loss there, right? The only thing that will come from that is gain or nothing at all. And so I love that, like having that date yourself mentality of there's no rush. You don't need to know everything about yourself day one. You don't need to know what you want to do for the next 10 years or who you want to be with or all of these like things that feel so heavy and big and impossible to approach when you're starting out at that point. But if you can start with something small, then at least you learn how to communicate with yourself. You learn how to listen to your body, how to listen to your mind, and that's such a skill that you can refine, right, and only get better at. And then you can approach those big giant things and be like, okay, what do we want to do here, type of thing. So yeah, that's great advice. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the breakfast approach. It's just ask yourself what you want to have for breakfast and then see how you feel with it. You will notice that maybe the first day you go for bacon and eggs and it tastes very well, but you feel tired and drained and
Hmm.
not at your best. And then you notice, oh yeah, maybe I like it, but maybe it's not the thing that's doing me good. So next
Hmm.
day you go for fruits and you
Hmm.
just, it's an experiment. And that's something I think that children have this and
Mm.
we just lose it. We get conditioned to not use it and have it anymore. They are just so curious. They are not doing things to achieve something. They rarely do. But quite often they just try out what comes to their mind and see how it goes and have fun along
Mm.
the way and laugh a lot about whatever is going wrong. And if we
Hmm.
can allow ourselves to be a little bit like the child version of us, to see how it's going, to find things out, to find out, do we like it, don't we like it? Maybe laugh about whatever is coming up, maybe laughing about ourselves or whatever it is, but just giving permission for the emotions that are coming in the present moment to just be there and
Hmm.
not going back to the initial, oh, I need to push this away. Because, as a people pleaser, I'm not allowed to show too many emotions apart from, oh,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm good, everything is fine. So, having this experiment to see what is coming up, how is it truly feeling, and maybe if you have a super, super, super amazing, brave day, you try to express this one to somebody else, maybe to a close friend. And then you see how the other person will react. And normally as a people pleaser, we expect something negative, like, oh, you're so sensible, or oh, that's not that worse, or whatever it is, yeah. But maybe we have this one friend who says, I get it, I see
Hmm.
you. And maybe we make the experience that, oh, being raw, being vulnerable, being transparent, being who I am in this moment is a beautiful experience. And it actually might create room to truly connect with another human being.
Hmm. Yeah, maybe you give them permission to feel, oh, she's talking about what's going on in her life. Maybe I have permission now to share what's going on in mine. And there's that gift to both of you where by you giving permission to yourself, you are then in turn giving permission to others around you to also make those tough choices, to admit you're struggling or to ask for help or to talk about what you want or any of these things that can be tricky. If we can start it, we end up having this ripple effect that's also really powerful and amazing too. And I love what you said about being a kid, right? And how kids are so naturally curious. They're so willing to make mistakes. They're so willing to change their mind every day. And that's fine, right? Like I used to nanny, and I remember toddlers, they might love mac and cheese one day, and the next day think it's the most disgusting thing ever, right? And I think for a lot of parents, that can be so frustrating, or as a nanny as well. But when you think about it, it's also so cool to see how they just listen to themselves, and they're okay. They're not so stuck in their ways the way we are as adults, who are like, okay, well, if I like this every day. If I am this person today, I'm this pace tomorrow, blah blah blah, right? And so on and so forth. And that's what gets us in that mentality of struggling with change and struggling with change, growing and basing all this stuff. But as a kid, they're so like, well, that's okay. I don't like mac and cheese today. What's the big deal? Right? And or like seeing the way they learn how to walk. Kid falls 500 times in a day, but they just get up and keep going. And I so agree. I know it comes back to what you said at the beginning. You said your 4-year-old is your greatest teacher. I 1,000% think that kids are 100% our greatest teachers. If we are willing to look at them and see them for what they are instead of what we want them to be, then we can gain so much from being around the little ones. Mm.
It's definitely the most beautiful experience of my life. And I see the children, they very often do not behave the way we want them to be or we expect
Mm-hmm.
them to be, because they luckily and fortunately haven't landed in the adult world yet. So I see them as unfiltered and raw and very honest and a lot of consciousness. So when she was still a baby and I looked into her eyes, I had the impression that I look into God's eyes directly, because there was no pretending, no manipulation. There was pure, it is what it is right now, here and there. It might be a smile, it might be a cry, whatever it is. It's okay. It is. That is life. And I so agree with, one day they might like one thing and the next day it's the most disgusting thing. But
Yeah.
the point is that we are constantly changing. These little ones, they are not the same little one tomorrow that they have been today, because they are learning and developing and growing on such a high speed. And actually, it's the same with us, you know, especially as people pleaser, we are striving for stability and safety, because that feels safe and secure and certain. This is something we can control, we can calculate, so we can always make the right move. The moment things are starting to change and change too massively, we become very, very insecure, because we can't anticipate what the right move is anymore. So that is like danger, danger, we are in danger here, and the nervous system will be triggered. But the fact is that that's the nature of life. The sun is never at the same place. The earth is never, nothing is at the same place now than it is in 10 or 5 minutes. So everything is changing, and we can see this through, we have summer, we have autumn, we have winter, we have spring, all these things. And that is the very nature of life, to change, to be in flow, to try things out, and to have parts dying, but not dying to die and disappear, but dying to be reborn in a different way. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And as a people pleaser, we need to learn to re-become a part of this beautiful flow. And what I've also noticed is what very often is missing, not only the trust to ourselves we have in ourselves as a people pleaser, because we have been told we are bad so many times, but also the trust in God. Call it God, call it the universe, whatever it is, call it life force. I don't want to fix it down to one specific word, but I know there is a magic out there. May it be God, the universe, the life force. But there is something energetical and magical, and that is something that we can connect to through our intuition. It's something that loves us indefinitely, that guides us, that sometimes you get these nudges to do something or to not do it. And it's not rational, but whenever I listened, it was the best thing to do, ever and always. It never failed me once. And that's also a thing, that beautiful things can happen when we learn to trust this again.
Totally. Yeah. I love that. Having something that is outside of you that you can release your expectations to, your worries to all of that. And I totally agree, whether, like you said, you call that God or whatever name you place to it. There's definitely a power in trust or having faith, right? It's this faith that it's not all on your hands, that you don't need to take on every single thing, right? And being able to release what is not in your control. And yeah, that's powerful. I love it. This has been such a cool conversation with you, Nadia. I feel like just we've had getting to hear your story was so amazing. I feel like you really dove in and shared so openly, which is amazing. But also, we just like got to dive into some like juicy topics and talk about it. And I feel like it's been a really amazing conversation. So I really appreciate you just showing up and being so vulnerable with me today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was so great. I enjoyed the conversation so much, and
Yeah,
I'm so grateful to be here today. It was
yeah,
just amazing. Thank you so much
so
for
cool.
providing the space to make this happen.
Of course, of course, of course. Well, as we wrap up our conversation today, do you mind if I head into our rapid fire questions?
No, give them to me. I'm curious.
Okay, perfect. Okay, first one I have is, if you were to pick a superpower, what superpower would it be?
Flying. I thought about this so many times, but to be able to go from one place to the other in high speed without lanes
Oh,
and planes and all these things, that would be so wonderful. I would be faster than Superman. That would be cool.
yeah, that would be amazing. And to get to see the world too, just free. Yeah, absolutely. So cool. Okay, next question is, what is a go-to comfort meal for you?
Oh, there are so many. I have to pick one. Oh, I love pasta in all variations.
Mm-hmm.
I love chicken pie. There are so many cheesecake. To
Oh,
be honest, I
yeah.
would love to decide for one, but I can't. There are so
That's
many things
okay.
that I
I'll
love.
take three. That's fine. Honestly, that was kind of like one full big meal, right? You got the cheesecake as a dessert, chicken pie, the pasta. I mean, a little dabble of everything, right? I love it. Okay, so next question I have for you is, if you were to share three books, podcasts, or resources out there for those that you feel like have just been so helpful for your growth and your, individual self, what would you recommend?
The first thing would be the Five Love Languages. I think it's written by John Goodman. That was definitely a catalyst and a game changer for me. I love this one. I also love a lot. I think it's the Four Agreements.
Oh,
I
yes.
hope it's
Mm-hmm.
not four, isn't it? Not five.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love this one, especially the part where it says, "Speak your truth, your inherent truth, but speak it kindly." That is
Mm.
so valuable. And I also really love The Big Leap because it explains very well how our brain is operating when things are getting too good and we are not used to it. And our alarm and panic mode gets on.
Mm.
So I probably, if I think a little bit more about it, I could probably name 50 books right
I'm
away.
sure.
But these are the three most impactful ones that come to my mind.
Perfect. I love it. Those I haven't read the third one, but the first two are two amazing books that I have read. Okay, and then last question I have for you is, why do you feel that it is important in your own life to be brave?
Because there is no reward without any risk. So
Mm,
whatever I did that spiraled me forward in a direction that was much better than what I had before. And that does not only apply to material things or possibilities, but also to authentic and true connections. The more I'm able to be vulnerable and be myself and show up as myself, the imperfect one, the deeper, more connected relationships I experience. And it has been the same with going abroad to study. I've been studying 1 year in Paris, 1 year in London, and I've never been abroad for a longer period in my life. So that was a huge step. but it was so beneficial and so much fun and so adventurous, so cool. So yes, be brave. If you can, be brave.
Yes, I love it. Such a good answer. Amazing. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Nadia, for being here. But before I let you go, is there anything, how can people find you? How can they connect with you? And what would you like to share?
Yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity. You can find me in my virtual home on my website at nadjahagen.com. And if you want to learn to set healthy boundaries that actually feel good on both sides, so for you as the one setting the boundary and for the one receiving it, so that you can banish people pleasing once and for all and feel confident in every interaction, then I have a free checklist for you. It's 8 steps to healthy boundaries where I very easily guide you through the whole boundary setting process. And I'll also give you a couple of phrases that you can have at the tip of your tongue when you need to say no and you don't want to ruffle any feathers. And you can find this on the first page of my homepage too, or you go to nadjahagen.com/boundaries-checklist.
Amazing. Perfect. And all of those will be in the show notes as well. So if you're interested in checking out those links, they are easily accessible. But again, thank you, Nadia, so much for being here and sharing your story with me. I really appreciate it. And so much love to you as you go out into the world and continue the work that you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening and watching this episode of the Brave Bitches podcast. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, share, review, all that good stuff. Also follow me on Instagram at Hannah Soul Marie or at Brave Bitches without the I for some behind the scenes look and clips from the episode. Again, thank you for listening and I'll see you next time.